Welcome to Let's Talk About It.
I'm Tamara.
And I'm Sheena. Today we're talking about the magic ratio that keeps you happily married.
Or in a relationship.
Well, specifically married. Well, I suppose a long-term relationship would also qualify, but I'll tell you why I'm saying married is because the research that we're going to discuss today was done by Dr. Gottman and Robert Levenson, and they began doing longitudinal studies on couples back in the 1970s. They asked couples to solve a conflict in their relationship in 15 minutes, then sat back and watched. After carefully reviewing the tapes and following up with them 9 years later, they were able to predict which couples would stay together and which would be divorced with a 90% accuracy.
90%.
That's correct.
Oh, wow. So it is long-term relationships, specifically.
Yes.
Okay.
So their discovery was quite simple. The difference between happy and unhappy couples is the balance between positive and negative interactions during conflict. There's a very specific ratio that makes love last. You want to know what that is?
I do. What's the golden ratio for relationship happiness?
5-1.
5-1 what?
You're so impatient. I'm getting there. Okay, so this means that for every negative interaction during a conflict, a stable and happy marriage has 5 or more positive interactions.
While in a conflict state, so not just generally.
No, this is specifically in a conflict state, but if you extrapolate this theory, then you'll see that it's an attitude that pervades the entire marriage.
Okay, so what you're saying is if you're having a fight or a conflict of some sort, there needs to be 5 good things that happen to every 1 negative.
Yes. So let's get a little bit into this. So Dr. Gottman says, when the masters of marriage are talking about something important, they may be arguing, but they're also laughing and teasing, and there are signs of affection between them that they've made emotional connections. On the other hand, unhappy couples tend to engage in fewer positive interactions to compensate for their escalating negativity. If the positive to negative ratio during a conflict is 1-1 or less, that's unhealthy and indicates a couple teetering on the edge of divorce.
Okay, but like when you're having a fight, how do you even get to that point where you're having positive interactions? I mean, for me, a fight is negative.
I absolutely understand what you're saying. Let me break it down a little bit more. What is a negative interaction? Okay, so what would you think would be a negative interaction?
I don't know. I suppose someone saying something negative to you. Okay.
Absolutely. But let's break it down a little bit further. So Dr. Gottman says anger, for example, which is one I would have thought would have been a negative, isn't a negative unless it's expressed along with criticism, contempt, or defense. So let's break it down even more. They basically came up with what they call the 4 horsemen of the marriage apocalypse.
It sounds very doomsday.
It kind of is, though. So the first one is criticism.
All right.
The second one, and we're going to go into more detail in a minute, but let me just give you an overview. The second one is contempt, followed by defensiveness and stonewalling. Okay, so criticism. There's a big difference between criticism and complaint. Now, complaint is, for example, saying, I was scared when you were running late and didn't call me. I thought we had agreed that we would do that for each other. That's a complaint.
Okay.
A criticism would be, you never think about your behavior and how it's affecting other people. I don't believe that you are forgetful, you're just selfish. You never think of others, you never think of me.
Okay.
Do you see how much more personal that is?
Yes.
Criticism paves the way for the other, far deadlier horseman. And that's a direct quote from this article, right? And it can turn into a cycle. It makes the victim feel assaulted, rejected, and hurt.
Okay, so the first step then, if you're having a fight, is to try stay away from criticizing each other.
Yes.
So you can complain and you can be angry and you can talk about whatever it is that you're having a fight about, but you need to stay away from criticism.
And don't make it personal.
So be factual, I suppose.
You can talk about your feelings and that sort of thing, but don't make it a personal attack on somebody. Don't make it a thing about how they've failed somehow.
Okay.
Okay, so criticism unfortunately opens the gateway to contempt, which is the second of the deadly horsemen. In the state, we are truly mean to one another. So whoever's being contemptuous is being nasty, like actually really nasty to the other person. And the target feels despised and worthless. So when we're in a state of contempt, we treat others with disrespect, we mock them with sarcasm, we ridicule them, we call them names, we mimic them or use body language such as eye rolling or scoffing.
Mm-hmm.
While criticism attacks your partner's character, contempt assumes a position of moral superiority over them.
Okay.
So something typical that somebody would say is, "You're tired, cry me a river. I've been with the kids all day, running around like mad to keep this house going. And all you do when you come home from work is flop down on the sofa like a child and play those idiotic video games. I don't have time for another child." Right? So you taking the moral high, well, the superiority, you behaving as if you're superior.
Okay.
And what that does, research shows that couples that are contemptuous to each other are more likely to suffer, and get this, from actual illnesses like colds and flus because their immune systems are lower.
So being contemptuous actually leads to physical side effects.
Yes,
Wow.
exactly. Right?
Huh.
So studies were actually done to test that, and it's like that's a fact.
It's just insane. I mean, like, you always hear this thing about, unhappy people being sicker. And
Well, if you think about it, we are, for lack of a better term, we're pack creatures, right? We belong in groups, in clusters, in families. Okay? And if the people that you are closest to, that you feel most connected with, are treating you like you're worthless, you're going to start believing you're worthless. And so and very often your mind tells your body.
Well, I suppose it's also part of stress, because stress releases cortisol, which leads to a whole host of actual like physical side effects and does make you sicker.
Absolutely.
So yeah, okay.
Okay, but an important thing to know about contempt, right, is it's fueled by long simmering negative thoughts about the partner. So you're not going to feel contempt unless you sit and simmer about negative thoughts around your partner. If you sit and think about how your partner is not contributing, is worthless, is not helping you, is, just a drain.
Yeah, and when you're keeping like lists of what you've done versus they've done, that kind of a thing.
Right. Most importantly about contempt is it's the single greatest predictor of divorce. And that sort of makes sense if you think about it, because if you're sitting there thinking all these negative things about your partner, how are you going to want to be with your partner in the longer term?
That's true. I mean, you're pretty much like rehearsing for hating this person.
Exactly. So watch yourselves. If you start finding contempt, nothing good comes from that. But we'll get just now into positivity. So let's just get through the negative stuff. Okay, so the third of the four deadly horsemen is defensiveness. So this is typically a response to criticism. When we feel unjustly accused, we fish for excuses and play the innocent victim so that our partner will back off. But this never actually works. Instead, what it does is it tells our partner that we don't take their concerns seriously, we don't take responsibility for our mistakes. So I'll give you an example of this. A question that a partner could ask another partner is, did you call Betty and Ralph to let them know that we're not coming tonight as you promised this morning? A defensive response to this would be, I was just too darn busy today. As a matter of fact, you know just how busy my schedule was. Why didn't you just do it?
Okay.
So it's sort of turning the blame. But you see in the question, the way it's phrased, you promised this morning, it's starting already with the criticism.
It's difficult though, because if you're being attacked, I think defensiveness is a natural response.
Absolutely.
I mean, in any kind of attack, physical attack, you try to defend yourself. Verbal attack, the same thing.
Absolutely. The problem is that this becomes this horrible cycle. So the partner responds defensively and then tries to shift the blame. Instead, a non-defensive response can express acceptance of responsibility, admission of fault, and understanding of your partner's perspective. For example, if you said instead, oops, I forgot, I should have asked this morning, if you could do it because my day was going to be hectic and it's my fault, let me call them right now.
Okay.
That sort of diffuses the whole situation.
Okay.
Unless your partner at that point is now on the contempt warpath, which does happen. So defensiveness actually escalates the conflict.
And once you reach contempt, is there any way to bring it back?
Yes, and we'll get to that just now, because there's 4 deadly horsemen of the apocalypse, but there's a whole bunch of positive things you can do.
Great. Let's get to the positive ponies of the apocalypse.
The positive ponies. It's like the My Little Pony of the apocalypse. Okay, but can we do the 4th one first?
Okay, let's do the
The
4th.
4th horseman is stonewalling. Okay, so stonewalling is usually a response to contempt. The listener withdraws from the interaction, shuts down, simply stops responding to the partner. Rather than confronting the issue, they start tuning out, not paying attention, acting busy, turning away, going off to do something else, becoming obsessed with like cleaning dishes or something, some other kind of activity. It takes time for the negativity created by the first 3 horsemen to become so overwhelming that stonewalling becomes the only out.
Okay.
Because very often it's a result of feeling physiologically flooded.
Okay.
So it's just too much, and your body just like can't cope, and your mind just can't cope. I don't know if you've ever had that scenario where you just feel like you even lack the language to express how you're feeling because just too much stuff is happening. It's just too much emotional turmoil, too much coming at you. You're just not interested.
No, I get it. And I can see how it can be used as like a more active, passive aggressive thing where you're actually just like stonewalling, not because you necessarily feel overwhelmed, but because you know it will
Bother the other person.
Yes. And then
So-
the other one where you do get to a point where you just can't, or you don't know what to do, and you just like stonewall because of that.
Unfortunately, stonewalling is not an easy thing to stop, and it becomes a habit.
I could see that.
And it's a really bad habit because it doesn't open up communication, and it just tells your partner that they're not worth the time and effort. A quick way to actually prevent that cycle is to stop the discussion. Ask your partner to take a break. Say, all right, I'm feeling too angry to keep talking about this. Can we take a break and come back to it in a bit? It'll be easier to do once I've calmed down. Then go away for 20 minutes and do something you actually enjoy doing. Read a book. Listen to some music. Take a walk. Go for a run. Do something that's positive. Anything to help you sort of work through and stop feeling flooded. Then return to the conversation once you're ready.
You're listening to The Lesbian Talk Show. TheLesbianTalkShow.com, your hub of podcast information.
So that was the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? But I'm pleased to say there's a whole bunch of positive things you can do during an argument to counteract the negativity of the argument.
Okay, so a herd of positive ponies of the apocalypse.
To prevent the apocalypse. These positive ponies are things that Gottman says masters of marriage do these things, right?
Okay.
So they ride these ponies.
Okay, so how do we become masters of marriage?
The first thing is they start conflict more gently. So instead of coming in and starting accusations or whatever it is, they'll start a much gentler conversation. Listen, sweetie, I need to talk to you about something and it's really making me feel sad or angry or whatever it is, but please just hear me out.
Okay.
They also make repairs in both minor and major ways that highlight the positivity in their relationship. Those are the major things that they do. But let's break it down a little bit more.
Okay.
So here's an active thing you can do. Be interested. Ask open-ended questions. Give subtle nods that you're actually listening and paying attention, and actually pay attention. So you nod, you make eye contact, you say at the right moments and whatever it is, because you're actually paying attention, you're actually listening. You express affection. So hold hands, offer a romantic kiss, embrace your partner when greeting them at the end of the day. Expressions of affection in everyday relationships can then translate into expressions of affection during conflict.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from this is in the times of fighting, you should be doing this stuff, but I think you need to be aware that you continue to do this stuff at other times as well.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, it's easy to get, to the point where work is overwhelming, home life is overwhelming, and you forget to do the small things like smile, to give a kiss.
Hold hands.
Yes.
So the thing is, these positives, if you make them a habit in your everyday relationship, it also becomes easier to do them when you're having a conflict.
Okay. It's like I get the theory, but the thought of holding hands or having a kiss while you're in the middle of the fight is just a little bit mind blowing.
Absolutely, but I'll tell you why it's a good idea. Within conflict, displays of physical and verbal affection reduce stress.
Yes. Get rid of that nasty cortisol that's going to cause all those actual physical issues.
If you're having a difficult conversation and your partner takes your hand and says, "Gosh, this is hard to talk about, but I really love you and I know we can figure it out together," then you're feeling heard, you're feeling appreciated, you're feeling like you're doing this together and you're not alone.
Sure.
This is super important. The next thing you can do is to demonstrate that they matter. So Gottman says, our motto for making marriage last is small things often.
That makes sense.
Yes. Then it doesn't feel like, okay, we're in the middle of the argument. Now I need to remember to do this and this and this and this while I'm feeling angry, because you're so used to doing those things.
Yeah. I think it's also, so if you keep doing stuff and you keep showing someone in small little ways, they know that you love them.
Yes.
So you stop to buy milk, but you get the person, their favorite chocolate or whatever it is. Or you brush, a lock of hair away from their eye. Whatever it is, I think it's just small. She just did that. Just small things that just keep showing that you care.
But that's exactly it, right? So, last week we spoke about the 5 love languages.
Yes.
Okay. So imagine if you compound the 5 love languages with this demonstrations that matter.
Yes.
It starts to form a bigger puzzle of behaviors. Bringing up small things that is important to your partner, even when you disagree, demonstrates that you're putting their interests on par with yours and showing that your partner that you care about them. How you treat each other outside of conflict influences how well you'll handle inevitable disagreements. You have to make these things habits, because then the habits
Stick. Yes.
For example, if your partner's having a bad day, you stop, pick up dinner on the way home, you show that she's on your mind. Which is exactly what you were saying.
Yes.
Now, if you bear in mind the love languages and this particular thing, right? So if you made me a cup of coffee, I would be eternally grateful.
If I made you a cup of tea?
Oh, please no. If I gave you a foot rub, you would feel it.
Yes.
It's demonstrations. And this has to do with the 5 love languages that we spoke about last week. So we're not going to get into that. If you're interested, look in the show notes. I'll put a link.
Go listen to the episode.
Absolutely. Okay, so the next thing is intentional appreciation. How you think about your partner influences how you treat them.
Yes. Okay.
So this is the opposite
Of contempt.
of the contempt thing. So you got to focus on the positives. Negativity is bound to creep into your thoughts, especially during conflict. But if you intentionally focus on the positives, you can counterbalance that. Here's a tip. Turn every thought into an action. Every time you express your positive thinking and give your partner a verbal compliment, no matter how small, then you're strengthening your marriage. So every single time you think something cool about me, if you say it.
You got beautiful eyes.
Thank you, my love.
Your dimple's gorgeous.
Okay, you're disrupting the podcast. Okay. My train was so derailed now. You just look way too pleased about that.
I feel pleased.
Force yourself to think the positive stuff. Train yourself.
And here's a tip from my So here's a tip that I have found very useful. My therapist gave it to me, and that is to think of 5 positive things. So something I struggle with is depression and anxiety brought on by certain situations. So what happens for me is I start to feel like I just can't cope with life and I can't do something. So the tip is to think of 5 good things that have happened today or 5 good things that will happen today. And it can be tiny. It can be, I chose a really great pair of shoes to wear today. the drive to work was easy. It can be tiny, it can be big. It doesn't matter as long as they're positive. I think the same thing can be used with relationships and with the person that you're with. So if you start thinking about how negative or negative thoughts about this person, maybe think of 5 good things about that person.
Yeah.
Remind yourself why you're together.
Absolutely. I admire you for many reasons. I'm pretty sure I can come up with 5 if I'm starting to feel negative towards you, because we do have a history.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone's got a history and everyone's going to have bad days and good days. But if you're having the kind of like not so much a bad day anymore, but it's turning into weeks or months or even years of just negative feelings towards someone, and that does create contempt, start to think about the good things. And it can be little. It can be that they made you a cup of coffee that morning. It can be that they made you a cup of coffee a few years ago and you really appreciated that action. But think about the good stuff.
Absolutely. Okay, so the next one is find opportunities for agreement. When couples fight, they focus on the negative parts of the conflict and miss the opportunities for agreement.
I agree.
In every opportunity, in every argument, you're going to agree on something.
Mm-hmm.
Seek opportunities, and what happens then is you're showing your spouse's viewpoint as valid.
It's true, because in a lot of fights, you're both really, really angry and you're so upset, but sometimes it's actually a very common thing that you're upset about and you're just coming at it from different angles. Like sometimes like the core to your fight is that you both feel alone in something.
It's true.
Um
And the thing is, if you seek an opportunity for agreement, you become an alliance.
mhm,
And being an alliance in a conflict means you're not alone anymore.
mhm. Something that Survivor has taught us. Alliances rock.
Isn't that the truth of the matter? Okay, I've still got a couple of these. Empathize and apologize. Empathy is the deepest form of human connection. So if you're in the middle of the argument, say something like, it makes sense to me that you feel whatever it is you feel,
Mm-hmm.
and it will help your partner see that you're on their team.
Yes, but I'm guessing this is like if you actually truly feel it, because if you
No.
don't, like it can come across as super insincere and contemptuous.
No. No, hang on. Okay. You don't have to agree with them. You have to just understand.
No, sure, but
Okay, so I'll give you an example. Say your partner's upset with something you said or did, and you apologize. And you say, I'm so sorry I hurt your feelings. You understand that you hurt their feelings.
mm-hmm.
So it's about understanding.
So it's also saying, I'm so sorry you feel that way.
No, because that's kind of contemptuous.
Yes. Okay.
Right. And you're being contemptuous. Like, let's not even pretend. We know we're being arsehole contemptuous people when we're saying stuff like that. We know we're manipulating and, like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's not pretend we have no idea that we're doing that. Accept your partner's perspective. An approach that drastically improves conflict is understanding that each of your perspectives are valid, even if they oppose each other and even if you don't necessarily agree.
Okay.
So let them know that their perspective is valid and makes sense, and show them that you respect it. And you can do this by summarizing your spouse's experience during a conflict, even if you disagree.
Okay.
Remember that validation doesn't mean agreement, but it does signal respect.
Okay, so it's the kind of thing where you say, I understand that you had a busy day and that you didn't have time to call so and so, but I'm still angry about it.
Yeah, and I think that that's fair, you know? And the last point on the last pony, right, is to make jokes. I know it sounds completely counterintuitive, but apparently playful teasing, silliness, finding moments to laugh together actually breaks the tension, eases the conflict, and if you do it with inside jokes that only the two of you share, it highlights your exclusivity as a couple and it sort of strengthens you as a couple.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It is.
So that is the Gottman research. So that's the 5-to-1 stuff. But then as I was doing research, I actually came across some other stuff.
All right.
So Christine Carter, and I think she's a psychologist specializing in kids.
Okay.
If I stand corrected on that. But she's particularly into raising children, but with a very positive attitude. So a positive parenting sort of thing. She wrote an article in 2009 asking, is it possible to praise your children too much?
I think this answer is yes.
So people were saying to her, if we keep asking kids what they're grateful for or what they're happy about or whatever it is, isn't that sort of stopping them from telling us when they're feeling angry or afraid?
Mm.
So aren't you training them in the wrong kinds of
Way.
way?
Because being angry or sad is still valid.
Absolutely. So she says it's not that you're trying to negate the negative stuff, it's just that you're keeping the ratio right.
Okay.
Okay. She says that actual research on optimal ratios of negative to positive. Flourishing individuals, high functioning people who score well on things like self acceptance, purpose in life, environmental mastery, positive relationship with others, and personal growth, experience a ratio of about 3 positive emotions to every negative one.
Okay.
So that's their own inner monologue.
Okay.
Okay, so Barbara Fredrickson, who pioneered this particular research that Christine Carter is quoting, says, having more positive than negative feelings is more generative. It's associated with creativity and openness to possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel more positive about the world, you're more open to possibilities,
Yes.
you're more open to learning, you're more open to taking new opportunities, you're more
Yes.
open to like making new friends, right? And then she also quotes the John Gottman study, which we just spoke about. So the ratios are pretty similar. So it's 3-1, 5-1, right? So there's far more positivity than negativity.
Yes.
And she says, similarly, high performance teams, that's like workplace teams, have a ratio of 6-1. And I think she's quoting here the Harvard Business Review research that was done.
Okay.
Negative emotions and experiences affect us more dramatically than positive ones do. Feelings of being frightened, for example, would generally stay with us for much longer than having a good laugh.
Okay.
We need to have more positive experiences in order to feel like we're thriving.
But that makes sense, even in a work sort of place, like teams that feel like a team, where they feel like they can trust each other, where they can depend on each other, are far more likely to actually achieve something than ones that feel distrustful, the ones that and actually get stuff done.
Yes, absolutely. Because you feel like you can work together towards something.
Yes.
Okay, so in terms of children, she basically says there is an upper limit to the amount of positive feelings a person can take.
Okay, and the magic number is?
Specifically, it's a ratio above 11.6 positive experiences to 1 negative one. And ironically, if you get above that, if you get to like 12 positive experiences to 1 negative one, it can turn a person sour.
Oh, wow.
Right. So you got to make sure that your kids have the language and the capacity and the ability to express the negative emotions. But you have to sort of guide them into more positive thinking because it will open them up to possibilities in life.
Well, I think it's, straddling that very fine line of building a child up. So
Yeah.
letting them experience enough negative or bad things,
Like failing.
or reprimanding, because reprimanding
It's true.
in the right circumstances is good,
Mm-hmm.
so that they're able to learn and to grow, versus just telling them that they're always great and amazing, and then the times that they do hear that they're not great, they don't trust that.
Or they stop trusting that they're that amazing and
Yeah,
like
true.
when everybody gets a certificate. When everybody gets a cup for participation and nobody actually wins the race.
Yeah, I think that, there's the two sides. You get the kids who end up thinking that they're like the most amazing thing ever and that the world should be at their feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kids who just can't believe in themselves because they've never actually achieved anything, really.
So she says, she rounds off her article by saying, so yes, it's possible to emphasize the positive too much, to dole out too darn much praise. But at least in my household, the challenge is not too much positive, but in keeping the ratio of positive to negative for her kids from about 5 to 6.
Okay.
So 5 positives, 6 positives to 1 negative. So if you're going to yell at the kid about homework, make sure you're also talking about 5 positive things.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting that these ratios exist.
And across all those different studies that, the 5 or 6 seems to be the sweet spot.
Pretty universal sort of space. Yes. So I have 2 points warring in my head right now. The first point is, if you think about your impact on the world, are you doling out 5 positives for every negative?
I hope so.
Because I think if we all thought that way, if we all understood this, if we all did that, can you imagine how different the world would be?
Oh, it would be very different, because I think we would be much nicer people, and I think society as a whole would be much nicer.
Absolutely. So that's my first thought that's worrying in my head. My second thought is to circle back to this 11.6 positive to 1 negative. And then the minute you hit like 12, you start to get sour.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's talk about that for a minute because I just thought that was really interesting, right? So there are people, for example, who keep saying to me, oh, we need negative reviews because I won't do negative reviews on my sites.
Okay.
I'll only celebrate and do positive stuff. Because my philosophy is there's too much negativity in the world and I only want to celebrate stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Having said that, though, my inner dialogue is certainly not only that of praise. I'm not, becoming sour to the world, but you can see that this is where these guys are coming from. They're coming from this place of if everyone gets a certificate, then, it's not valid.
No, I get it, but I mean, like, just in terms of your book review sites, those authors, the ones that you're reviewing, they're getting other reviews. Not every review that they get in the world is going to be a positive one. And you're also, I think more importantly, you're not giving books that you don't like a good review.
No, I'm not. But that's happening behind the scenes. We're rejecting books behind the scenes that we didn't like.
No, sure. Point is, you're not for the sake of it just doling out good reviews.
No.
I think at that point, that's when you're starting to get to that 12 whatever, because everything is a positive and not everything can be positive.
Right. I just don't do the negative stuff in public.
No. And I mean, like, you don't need to do it in public.
No. But it's such an interesting thing that you can actually over-positive yourself to the point where you start becoming sour. So that's fascinating for me. So if you have an experience of any of these things, write to us. Email us on podcast@thelesbiantalkshow.com.
Or start a post on the Lesbian Talk Show chat group on Facebook.
Yeah, and tell us about it because I'd actually be really interested to know what your experience is of this sort of relationship. Have you ever stonewalled someone? Have you become defensive?
Mm-hmm.
I know that I am particularly awful with contempt and criticism when I'm angry about something.
Yeah, and let us know. Did you grow up in a household that was too positive, in a household that was too negative? Or were you like Goldilocks and found the sweet spot of a home?
Did any of us? So my new goal in life is to understand this better and make sure that we have positive arguments. I think that's a cool goal to have.
It's a very cool goal to have.
So I'm going to post some links in the show notes to some of the articles that I referenced today. And I think that's all for today.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening. And don't forget to go review us on Apple Podcasts. If you give us a 5-star review, that really helps others to find our podcast.
Absolutely.
And don't forget to share it with your friends, your loved ones, those that you're fighting with.
Yes. Share the love, people. Bye.
Bye.